Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty, everybody. I'm very honored today to have a special guest, my good friend Lloyd Ward. He's the founder and CEO of Ward Holdings. And what he's doing with his business, what he's done throughout his career, and what he is unfolding in the country of Africa is just absolutely extraordinary. We're going to talk about his background and share his story, share what's happening with his business and his team and his vision. I'm very excited to have you with us today, Lloyd. Thank you so much for making the time.
It's great to be with you, Patrick, and your listeners. My
pleasure. And I'm, if you're listening in today, or if you're listening to this recording later, this is an episode I've been looking forward to now for several weeks. It's a story that is just really almost overwhelming when you hear it. The pieces that have come together, the people, the preparation that's gone into it. It's I'm a big believer, Lloyd, in what I refer to as divine choreography, and I see that in effect in your story and in your project. So I know you agree with that. So I always start out every episode by sharing a couple of reasons why I've invited this guest to be on our show, Finding Certainty. And as you all know, Finding Certainty is about two things, really. It's about evolving as a company or as an organization, being willing to change, being willing to think outside the box, consider new approaches, new relationships, new technologies, and so forth. And it's also about working together, about linking arms to make things happen. We may vote differently. We may come from different backgrounds. We're different races, different genders, different sexual orientations. The list goes on. But we have more in common than we have differences. And if we look for those commonalities, we can accomplish amazing things. And so that's the first reason why I invited Lloyd to be on our show, because as I've gotten to know him and his team, his extraordinary team, Martin Johnson and others, they are an epitome of this principle of working together to bring to pass amazing things. Secondly, as you hear Lloyd's history and his career, you're probably the most accomplished guest I've ever had on my show, Lloyd, if I may say so. So I'm very honored to have you be here. But so let's jump into it. If you would be so kind, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your background? I know you've done amazing things in your career. You were the first African-American CEO of a Fortune 500 company. You were the CEO of Maytag, the senior vice president with Pepsi, if I'm not mistaken, president of Frito-Lay. I mean, the list goes on and on. You're president of the 2002 Olympic Committee, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
That is correct.
I mean, you have a resume that puts most people to shame.
Well, not really. I just have a resume where God allowed me, and He had a plan bigger for me than I had for myself. He allowed me to see and do the things that I needed to see to prepare me for His assignment for me on earth. When God's plan is bigger for you than you have for yourself, amazing things happen. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I actually was raised in a suburb of Detroit, a rural area, so not in the urban city. And, we had a little farming area, and we grew up I have two brothers and two sisters, so 5 of us, and a mother and a father. We grew up in a nuclear family. And we had, we did farming, we did canning. You remember the old canning that you did? And maybe you're too young to know that, Patrick, but it was you really made things work for yourself. And I grew up in that you just take a hold of things and make them work for yourself. We didn't have a lot of means, but we didn't consider ourselves poor.
Right.
And so I got an education. I went on to Michigan State University. I earned my way there through academic and athletic scholarship, and got an engineering degree, then later an MBA. And then I started working at Procter & Gamble for 17 years, from entry level to vice president. then on to Pepsi Cola, vice president, then the Frito-Lay, president of Frito-Lay. And that's pretty significant in terms of God preparing me for what I'm doing now. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then on to be the first African-American CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I did not set out to do that in my life. That was something that God allowed me to do as he was preparing me for my assignment on earth. Most people see the things that I've done in my career as my crown of achievement. And while they are noteworthy, they were preparation for this moment in time.
Right.
On to be the CEO of the United States Olympic Committee going into the 2002 Winter Olympic Games, on the board of J.P. Morgan Chase and General Motors. After I left corporate America, I went to Wall Street with a friend of mine, another African American, and two African Americans raised $300 million on Wall Street in a SPAC, special purpose acquisition company, which is a particular kind of instrument that you can use in the capital markets. And so God has prepared me for what is happening now and what we're doing in Africa.
Right. Well, I speak about divine choreography, and I've seen that in my life. I've seen that in many of my guests, but it's very apparent in your life and your career. I completely agree that the Lord has been preparing you for what you're doing today. And I'm glad you mentioned the fact, I was going to bring it up if you didn't, that as much as you've accomplished, as many accolades as you've received and so forth, as much experience as you've gained, you don't consider that the pinnacle achievement. What you consider the highlight and what will be your legacy, I believe, is what you're doing now, which we're going to talk about today. So that's a great precursor to our conversation today. So anyone, go ahead.
So Patrick, think about it this way: that iron sharpens iron, and God prepared me for this moment in time. Right. And so while I had those achievements during my career, it was in 2017 that God first started to reveal to me my purpose to be on this planet. And that was after a successful raise of the SPAC, $300 million. And I got invited to places around the world to talk about how two Black guys can go on Wall Street and raise that kind of money.
Right.
And one of the African countries, and only one African country invited me, and that was Ghana. And so I went. It was a black tie affair, and it was a wonderful evening. And after the affair, they asked me if I wanted to go out and see the Atlantic Ocean on a star-filled night. And I said, of course I do. And so we went, but it was on a boardwalk that was distant from the water. And so I wanted to get closer. Now, you won't believe this, Patrick. I took off my shoes, took off my socks, rolled up my tux pants, and I started to walk that sandy beach to the water's edge. And those that were with me followed suit. We got to the water's edge, and I was standing there looking at that magnificent ocean that seemed to go on forever, and the stars and the bright in the sky, and in far distance, it seemed like heaven and earth came together. And I was marveling at the amazement of God in my presence, and at that moment in time, Patrick, he struck me to my knees. And I remember when I was falling to my knees, those that were with me were saying, Mr. Ward, Mr. Ward, Mr. Ward, Mr. Ward. And their voices faded in the distance as God took me to the spiritual realm. And Patrick, he let me see souls, millions of souls, souls of our ancestors that were chained and stuffed together like sardines in the bowels of slave ships, many of them not to make it. And those that did, there was no way back. And as I was there on my knees, my soul cried for our ancestors. God said these words to me: these souls are mine, my son. And he let me come back to the earthly realm. Now, Patrick, I did not know that was God preparing me for this moment in time, my assignment on earth. And much happened since 2017, but you know what we're doing now, and we'll share that with the listeners.
Right. I don't know if you don't know this, but I titled this episode Inspired Leadership and the Unshackling of Africa. And I think it's right in line with what you're talking about. And as we talk about the history of Africa, and I know it's a lead into this project that you're spearheading that is so immense and so potentially generationally changing, life-changing, right? I believe that, and I've heard you talk about this. I've learned much of this from you, but I've studied it. I've research. I just watched a documentary just recently called Descendant. It was about the last slave ship that brought people to Africa. It was actually after slavery had been abolished. This was a big cover up. I don't know if you've seen this documentary, Lloyd, but highly recommend you watch it on Netflix. It was about a ship called the Clotilda that came into, I guess, Alabama. And then slaves were brought off the ship and hidden on land because it was against the law then to bring slaves into America by penalty of death. And then they burned the ship to hide the evidence. And this whole documentary is about how they have recovered this ship and as evidence of this crime. And much of the documentary talks about how, and I've heard you even say this before in your speeches, and it talked about how if you don't know where you're from, how can you know where you're going, right? And this is hard for me to relate to. My family goes back generations. I know my genealogy. My dad was a professional genealogist, and he traveled the South Pacific, and he's done genealogy all over the world. And I know this is a very personal, very important element of what you're doing. It's helping bridge that gap and helping unshackle Africa as a country. Now, any comments on that? Just this thought. It's interesting. I just watched this documentary just about a week ago, and I thought, wow, what an important insight into this conversation.
Well, it is insightful and it is relevant. Slavery by design broke up Black families, broke up, husband from wife and mothers from children, and it did that by design. It did that so that slaves would be easier to control. And so many African Americans, including myself, we don't know where we're from. We know we're from Africa, but we don't know where in Africa. We don't know what village or what part of Africa we're from. Right. Now, you can, with DNA now, you can find certain pathways back to your genealogy. And many of us do that. And my brother has done that. I haven't. And so it's very interesting. But here's the thing. It's one thing to know that scientifically. It's another to know that in your soul. Right. And it is about the soul. So I am definitely a U.S. citizen, and I am very proud of that, and I wouldn't have had it any other way, and God blessed me with that. But my soul is African. And as I have reconnected with the motherland, here's the thing to understand. God planted the seed of humankind in Africa. And in Ngorongoro, Tanzania, is the first evidence of humankind. Right. So all of us, white, black, red, brown, yellow, we are all from the Africa diaspora. We all came from Africa.
Right. We are all brothers and sisters.
We're all brothers and sisters.
It's one of the things I love about your project is not only is it helping Africa come out of the Dark Ages, right? Out of the colonialization and marginalization and the forces, very powerful forces that have kept Africa down. You're bringing it out into the light, into the 21st century, and it's very inspiring. And I think not only does it raise up Africa and impact the African people and those who are investing in this project and so forth and so on, but I believe it impacts everyone because a rising tide rises all ships, right? If we can improve, the not just the economics, but the understanding and appreciation and value of Africa, I believe we improve the world as a whole. And it's very important, I think. So,
well, Patrick, even more than that, which is 100% aligned with my view, my worldview, there's even a more practical way to understand this. So Africa is the most resource-abundant land on Earth, and yet it contributes less than 3% to the global economy.
That blew my mind when I heard that.
It's hard to imagine, and it can only happen through systemic and intentional marginalization. Right. And so how does that happen? It's because Africa, out of colonialism, and it's only been since the mid-60s, the early 60s, that Africa has been self-governing. It's been colonized and run by its European masters for 300 years.
Right.
And so today, Africa monetizes all its vast resources at the lowest value in the global economic supply chain, at commodities for agricultural crops and unrefined metals and materials from what's extracted from their land at the lowest economic value. And what we're doing is we're providing a pathway because God has said that it is time for kingdom on earth. It's kingdom time.
Right.
And we are only doing what God is asking us to do. I know my assignment, and God says it's already done. Go do the work. You want certainty? I loved your definition of certainty as you talked about it at the beginning of your show, and that's earthly. With God, the certainty is it's already done. He knows past, present, and future. He knows the beginning. He knows the end.
Right.
We are playing in his scenario, his domain. And so since he knows that and it's already done, and he tells us to go do the work, you know the power of that in terms of going out and doing what you have to face every day to change the paradigms of the earthly world to pursue the power of heaven,
right,
and kingdom. Well, that's certainty.
You know, that reminds me of a lesson I learned once about how we are discovering who we are. And it's not learning it for the new time or for the first time. It is actually remembering who we are and having it revealed to us who we always were, who we are at our core. I loved that. I love that insight into, I guess, our makeup and our divine heritage, I think is probably the best word.
Well, Patrick, all things are connected, past, present, and future. So our present is, as we look at the stars at night, that star's distant past. It took many, many years for that starlight to reach our eyes, which is our presence. But that star is its distant past. And God sees all. So all things are connected, past, present, and future. The stars are already in our future. And so we have to understand that through divine guidance. And people ask me what my superpower is, if you can imagine that. You know what I tell them, Patrick?
Connecting people.
I tell them, no, sir. I say, God speaks to me and I listen.
That's awesome. You know, I used to make New Year's resolutions every year, and I finally stopped. I made one goal. I've done this for several years, and that one goal was to follow every prompting. To listen to his hand in my life. When you do that, you do much better, right? You're on the right path. So we're up against our first break, but Lloyd and I met at Liberty University at a big CEO summit not too long ago, and I really felt like I'd met my brother at Kaka in Swahili, right? My brother.
That is correct.
We hit it off right from the beginning, and really honored to have you. We're going to go to break real quick, but we're visiting with Lloyd Ward, CEO of Ward Holdings. Looking forward to continuing the conversation with you, Lloyd. Thanks again for being here.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, T-E-A-M, like Mary.com.
Voice. You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back, everybody. We're visiting with Lloyd Ward, my good friend and founder and CEO of Ward Holdings. We're going to be talking in this next segment about his project, what they're doing, and the different facets of it. We've visited a little bit about his background, which is incredibly impressive. We talked about how he has been prepared throughout his life, and he's, as much as Lloyd has accomplished, he's very humble. He doesn't like talking necessarily about his achievements, because he really believes today what he's doing is the pinnacle of his career. But he has accomplished and served in some extraordinary roles, including the CEO of Maytag and so forth and so on. Now, you were talking about the $300 million SPAC that you were able to go get from Wall Street, Lloyd, and I've got to say that, a SPAC is it wasn't even necessarily targeted or planned for a specific project. It's basically just going and getting $300 million to use on projects that you saw fit. And that says volumes about your reputation in the industry that you could actually go do that. I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment. You talked about.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
You talked about how steel sharpens steel and opposition. Do you mind just commenting a little bit on this? It's a question I've had. What was it like becoming a CEO of a Fortune 500 company as a Black man in America? I can't imagine that it wasn't a challenge. And I'm just calling, let's refer to the elephant in the room here. It must have not been easy. And I think it says a lot about who you are, that you were able to make that happen. And I do believe the Lord was behind it. I believe that his hand was in your work. He picked the right person. He prepared you. He groomed you. But I'd be really interested to know just maybe a minute or so insight into that experience. I know it's hard to combine 40 years into 1 minute, but do you mind commenting on that?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I think this first, I am not perfect, nor did I do everything right. I made mistakes, but I did things more right than wrong. And I had one philosophy, and that if better was possible, good was never enough. I was always reaching for the more. I was always challenging myself to be the best. Now, I will tell you that going through corporate America, the thing that is so clear to me is I didn't do it by myself. There was a time in my career when I thought I was all of that. But, God has a way of humbling you. And I then got caught in a couple of things that weren't as successful as I was used to, and I'm trying to figure out which way was up. And so don't think that this is some fairy tale story of someone that just showed up and just moved its way through corporate America. That is not the case. I will tell you this. What allowed me to do it was I always stayed in the game. I always sought to be my best. And there were many people that helped me along the way. This was God preparing me. I know I did not do this by myself. I had great mentors. And there's an African fable about an elephant and an ant that were walking through the jungle together, and they approached a bridge, and they decided to cross it together. So as they're crossing it, they get in this span, and that bridge starts to sway and rumble and creak. They go to the other side and disembark from the bridge, and that ant looks up to that elephant and says, boy, we sure shook that thing, didn't we? So here's the thing, that you can be an ant, and if you walk with elephants as I did in my journey up, I had great mentors, and I don't know how God put them in my life. I had great mentors that helped sharpen me, shape me, empower me, support me to do the things that God would have me to do and prepare me for my assignment on earth. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I wouldn't be who I am without mentors like yourself. I consider you a mentor now, Lloyd, and I appreciate what I'm learning from you and what I've learned from others. My dad, my grandfather, my partners, the list goes on. I have a mentor named Carl Cogswell, he's in his late 80s now, or his mid 80s, and he's probably taught me as much as anybody ever has. And so they say we're the sum total of the 5 people we surround ourselves with, and I think it's absolutely true. But
very good. Hey, so Patrick, Patrick, wait. So here's the deal. So ants can become elephants, right?
Right.
I mean, isn't that the beauty of it? I mean, that's God's way, right? So I'm now an elephant for others. And when you understand that that's God's way and God's will, then you accept it with pride and you are humble in His presence.
Right. And he uses us to accomplish His purposes. I mentioned the Descendant documentary, the story of the Clotilda, because I see, and anyone who has their eyes open is seeing more and more of these kinds of occurrences. Your business and your project is one of those. It can be a major contributor. But there are other stories of the truth coming out and of people coming together and unity happening, and black, white, multiple races working together to accomplish good. And I know whose hand is behind it, right? But it's very inspiring. It's very exciting to see it happening. So let's jump into your project. We've only got an hour here, so let's make sure we don't run out of time. So talk about Ward Holdings. Talk about your project. We alluded briefly before to the fact that Africa only produces less than 3% of the GNP, although it produces 60% of the resources. Right? It's one of the largest continents in the world. It's abundant in minerals and agriculture and so many different resources. It's in this extraordinary continent made up of millions and millions of people and dozens of countries. But why is it that it's only producing 3%? And how is Lloyd Ward how is Ward Holdings going to change that?
Well, okay. So Africa has 60% of the arable land on Earth. Arable land is land that you can grow stuff on. So it's agricultural land, right? And so Africa will have to be a bigger player in global economy as the world continues to expand. Expected to be 9 billion people by 2050 from 7+ billion now. Okay.
Right.
And you got to feed the world's people. And right now we have food insecurity in the world. Productivity and the benefit of Africa in the global supply chain of food is going to be critical for the world to be sane and fed. In addition, Africa has many other resources that fuel modern technology, graphite and all the things that are part of energy storage in electric vehicles and electric power, right? Clean energy, sustainable. And I can go on and on with this. But what we are doing in our company is that we're focused on the agricultural sector. We went to Africa on assignment from China, if you can imagine that. And I had extensive experience in China. 20 years I was involved in China when it was less developed than Tanzania is today. And now China is one of the industrial powerhouses in the world. So I've seen the transformation in 25 years. And I look at Africa today and I say, what's missing? And what's missing is the idea that you can create economic value through value addition of what is extracted from your land or grown on it and serve the world in a way that everyone wins. That's our kingdom solution. Right. Not that one wins and another loses. It's not a zero-sum game. And here's the thing, Patrick. we are working on some projects that are truly transformative economically. Cashews. Cashews are the strongest economic platform that I've seen of any agricultural crop in my career. And I was the president of Frito-Lay, and we made all of our great products that your listeners consume and enjoy in the U.S. from agricultural crops, corn, potatoes, and the like. And so I could spot this because God had prepared me for this moment in time. Cashews. Now, this is, for those of you that are in business and have some idea of what I'm going to say. So we are seeing that we can get 80% gross margin, 30% EBITDA margins, and cash flow positive in the first year of operation of industrialization of the cashew nut subsector. Now, those numbers may not mean something to several of you, but I will tell you as an expert industrialist, that is transformative. It operates more like a high-tech company than an agricultural company. And the reason is that the value that God has put in this crop, this cashew crop, is so abundant. It's part of what you see in Africa, that the economic benefit of what they grow on their land and extract from it is exported and not enjoyed by the indigenous people. Let me just say this, and God would not have made Africa the most resource abundant land on earth and expected scarcity for its inhabitants. You see,
right?
That's not God, that's man. And so we have an opportunity to, as we listen to God and as we find the pathway forward, to unlock his provision and promise to Africa. And guess what, Patrick? The world will become a better place.
I agree. Balance the scales, as it were.
Balance the scales.
I think not just right wrongs and make up for those wrongs, but I think really unveil, kind of like peel back the layers of the plan that has always existed, the plan that was supposed to happen. It's just been delayed for these hundreds of years. I think God had the plan. I mean, we know in God's time, 1,000 years is a day for him. So it goes, it hasn't been as long for him as it has for you and for many of us, but it's still a plan, I believe, that was supposed to and is supposed to happen and is now being unveiled and now coming into fruition. So let me comment just on the cashews real quick, because this is something I've learned from you, and I didn't know this before. Cashews are my favorite nut, but I've also learned that there's so many other ways to use the cashew, where you have the nut itself, you can grind down the shell and get about 20% of oil out of it. You can turn that shell into kind of like a charcoal briquette that burns hotter and cleaner than a charcoal briquette. Even the fruit itself can be used in multiple different ways, and makes me think of corn, where you can get polenta out of it in cereal and a cornmeal and even ethanol and all these different things that comes out of corn. There's multiple different revenue sources. And when you can have one product that produces multiple revenue sources, you're onto something. I mean, I've heard you say it's $1 trillion project, right? Just the cashews alone.
Well, therein lies God's provision, right? So you can't make this up. If God had given me a magic wand and said, my son, design a crop that will help you unlock my provision and promise to a people and its land, I would not have been smart enough to design this harvest.
Right.
And you stated it exactly right, that there are multiple very profitable economic cash streams that come from this one crop. Now, here's the thing that we've done, and this is historic. In November 4th, 5th, and 6th, we celebrated Tanza Fest, where in the past 3 years, we've been re-engineering something that the continent has been trying to do for 30 years. And that is Africa harvests 60% of the cashew nuts in the world, but no one knows it. They sell their cashew nuts as commodity to Vietnam and India, and they process it and sell it into the global marketplace. And so Africa is not even noted on the country of origin of the cashew nut. Now, what we've done is we've re-engineered so that we do in-country processing of the cashew nut. We then do value addition consumer goods packaging. We branded it as Tanzanuts, the best tasting cashew nuts from the rich and fertile soils of Tanzania direct to the U.S. market, direct to your pantry. From seed to global market, from seed to consumption. We've re-engineered, my company, the entire supply chain. And in November, early November, we had the first container of product that was grown, processed, packaged, and shipped directly to the U.S. No brokers, dealers, traders, handlers in the middle, direct to the U.S. It was historic, and we have much more to come.
Well, cutting out the middlemen is a big piece of how to make this so economical, right? I mean, you've talked about how farmers make, I think it's 10 cents per kilo currently. Is it 10 or 20 cents per kilo? But with your project, by taking it direct to consumers, they can make as much as $1 a kilo. And you're the expert on the numbers, but do you want to talk about that? Because that's cutting out these middlemen and doing what you're doing.
Yeah. There's two things. There's cutting out the middleman. We call it disintermediation. So we're disintermediating non-value added players in the global supply chain. That's one thing. And the other thing is we're creating more economic value from the crop itself. Okay, so for those two things are what create enormous financial returns and transformative returns. So for Africa as a continent, 60% of the cashews that are harvested every year, if we take them to the market as a consumer packaged goods and industrial products that you get from the shell and from the apple, what you have is $1 trillion business. Now, $1 trillion is a big number. That's 1,000 billion or 1,000,000 million. But what you have is Africa has such vast resources at scale that one can find a way to industrialize it. We call it MDI, market-driven industrialization. And we have kingdom principles that drive that for us. 3 basic principles. 1, know and serve your market. 2, follow the money. 3, act in unity. Those are all kingdom principles. And so we talk about how we serve the market. You know and serve your market. The U.S. is the number 1 importer of cashew nuts of any country in the world. Know and follow the money. There's incredible economic benefit, as you said, in 3 different profit streams from the same harvest, and then acting in unity from the farmer to the processor, to the logistics supporter, to the U.S. buyer, on into the U.S. market, and every country working with every other country, not in competition, but to serve the market. That's how we're approaching it, and it is working.
Well, and I know it's not just cashews, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. As big as that market is, $1 trillion product or project, it's the tip of the iceberg because you're also going to be bringing in tea and spices and rice, and you even have fresh food through your sister company, Motherland, which we're up against our break. But I want to come back and talk about that briefly, and then get into the IPO that you're working on. You have a pre-IPO in process, and talk a little bit about the importance of transparency and the importance of the financial side of this, just what you're valued at right now. It's extraordinary, Lloyd. So
thank you.
We're going to take another quick break, everybody. We're visiting with Lloyd Ward, CEO and founder of Ward Holdings. Really enjoying the conversation so far, Lloyd, but we will be right back. Hold tight, guys. We'll be back in just a moment.
Follow us on Twitter at VoiceAmericaTRN. Get the lowdown on guests, new shows, and your favorites. That's VoiceAmericaTRN.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Be sure to like the Voice America Business channel on Facebook. You'll find out about up-to-the-minute business happenings and get ideas from entrepreneurs and business professionals. Search Voice America Business or click the like button under the player and stay ahead of the curve.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
We are back with Mr. Lloyd Ward, founder and CEO of Ward Holdings. Lloyd, thanks for being with us thus far. I'm really enjoying peeling back the layers of your Tanzanets and Motherland project. Do you mind going into a little bit of detail about the plans for the company? We've talked a little bit about the cashew crop and the potential. There's also this fresh produce side with Motherland. And that was, when we were at Liberty University and I heard you speak and I heard your partners speak, his speech was one of those that really touched me as well, because he talked about making up for past wrongs. He talked about working together to accomplish this divine project, this divine operation. And it was just very touching. He's a white man talking about wanting to make things right and doing so in this way. And I really appreciate it. I think everybody in the room, there's a lot of emotional people. You could tell they were choked up listening to both him and to you. But tell us a little bit about Motherland and just the relationship, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I will. And I'll tell you a little bit about Jim Bloom, who is my partner at Motherland. Patrick, the human genealogy is that we're 99.99% the same in our genetic structure. Mm-hmm. And so only 1/100th of 1% defines all the diversity in humankind on Earth. Okay, now, and so that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is for those of us that are faith-based, we transcend color. We transcend differences to really unite around our faith. And that's what you just referenced with my dear friend, Jim Bloom, and what he's done with partnering with us to create Motherland. We are talking Africa Fresh Direct. We're talking perishables. We're talking about as you harvest it, it will come to the market. It will be on the shelves in the U.S., although it's grown in Africa. And we have come together to open up direct bilateral trade. And it is transformative because what's hard to believe is the U.S. has very little direct trade with Africa. For instance, we buy 90% of our ginger from China. China buys 80% of their ginger from Africa. Go figure. Why do that? Why not just buy our ginger from Africa, right? And so the world has set up to marginalize Africa, and the U.S., the largest consumption market in the world, does not trade with the land that can produce the most agricultural produce, and by the way, other minerals and industrial materials than any other nation on Earth, any other continent on Earth. And so what we're doing is, and this to your point around the reconciliation, making the wrongs right. We pray for this on earth as it is in heaven. And that's what kingdom is all about, on earth as it is in heaven. And so we're not doing anything. Here's the thing. When you're doing the righteous thing and the thing that is to be as God would have it, then that's when you have certainty, even though the pathway can be difficult. And so we are, with this parallel company, our sister company, we are in the process right now of bringing fresh avocados directly to the U.S., fresh ginger, fresh strawberries, fresh. I can go on and on with this because there are 25 items that we have market requests for to bring directly from Africa into the U.S. And that's just the start. And so that's one side of it. The other side of it is that, when we look at MDI, market-driven industrialization, it creates transformative economics. And the thing that we're doing is we are pursuing on the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange becoming a publicly traded company. Now, remember when I raised with Ed Rigaud $300 million on the U.S. stock market, Wall Street. One of the things you do with a SPAC is you use that money, $300 million that we raised, to buy a private company and take it public. You combine your cash with their operating platform, and in doing that, you create a publicly traded company. And so God gave me that experience. And I also had the experience of running a Fortune 500 company as a public entity. And so I know the value of a publicly traded company, and I know its limitations. And so here's the reason why we want to move our company to a publicly traded company. Most people advise us against it because you have to disclose, because you have to tell people what you're doing. You have requirements to disclose what you're doing and be transparent. That's what the public market requires. And we say that one of the most important things that will help Africa unlock its vast resources and become part of the mainstream of the global economic enterprise is transparency. You see, Africa is a land of broken promises and dreams to be realized. The broken promises, 300 years, they've been gamed. They've been shortchanged. They've been promised things in their front while people were picking their pocket in the back. And they don't know who to believe and what to believe. It took us 2 years to get to a point where we could be trusted, and we are the direct aspirant as African Americans coming back to our homeland. And so transparency matters. So we want to be transparent. We want to show the world the benefit of partnering with Africa to help unlock its provision from the heavens. That's the first. Second is the public market is faith-based. Most people don't see it that way. When you invest in a stock, you're investing in the hope, the prayer, the faith that it will go up. The stock market pays for the future cash flow streams of an economic platform, a company, for the future cash flows. Not what you did last year, not even in meeting your quarterly earnings targets. It can punish you for missing your targets. But the market really wants to know, what are the future expectations of cash going forward? And that's what they will reward you for, their belief in what you can produce going forward. And guess what? There's no land on earth that has more opportunity going forward than Africa, you see. So I hope you get the connection that if the market values future cash flows, and Africa has the most resource abundant land on earth, and if we partner with Africa to bring Africa into the mainstream of global economic enterprise, Africa today is like the U.S. 150 years ago. Africa is at the age of the dawn of industrialization. Africa is at like the times of the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and the Carnegies. Rockefeller money is still around today. At his height, Rockefeller was 3 times the net worth of Jeff Bezos today, one of the most successful entrepreneurs of our time. And I know him, and he's a fabulous individual and has done an incredible job with Amazon. And so I'm not saying that we are Rockefeller or that we're Jeff Bezos and Amazon. I'm saying that these are the times of great wealth creation. And one of the ways to unlock that wealth is through the public market, where you have transparency and you can get broad participation in your value creation platform.
Exactly. Well, I know the fact that you've already been valued as a company as part of this pre-IPO at a valuation of over $5 billion. It's what, $5.6 billion? And you just had your first shipment come in about 3 weeks ago, right? I mean,
yeah. So the market values you for what you can do, but you have to have evidence underneath it that you can do it.
Exactly.
And so the fact that we are actually now shipping product is more evidence that our platform can deliver its promise. And so every time we take a step further and we go from 1 container to 10. We're looking at 10 containers this year, and we want to go to 10 containers per month next year, and then 100 containers a month for the following year, like that, right? And so this is a scaled business, and it has great economics. And so if you can scale a business that has 30% EBITDA margin, 20% cash flow margins, you've got a value creation machine. The stock market will reward you for that. So we want to put that in front of the world. We want to show the world the value of Africa when you partner with it to unlock its vast riches.
Well, there's so many parts of this story that just resonate for me. Talk about finding certainty. It's really about creating certainty, right? It exists. It can be had. It's peeling back those layers to remember it and to discover it. And I love your comment about how God's already done it, right? He's the same today, tomorrow, or yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And he has had this plan in place. He's been patient, maybe working and waiting and preparing people like you to bring it to pass. But I love that element of it because, you're talking about a pre-IPO. I mean, your shares are at 10 cents a share right now. And one of the reasons you have the shares such a low cost is so that anyone can afford them, including the farmers and the others back in Africa, right? So there's so much symbolism and significance in this story, and spirit, if I may say so. And I love that. I mean, even when you talk about the Tanza Fest that was in New Orleans 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you held the celebration at Congo Square.
Yes. Do
you mind sharing why that was significant?
Yeah, and it was significant, Patrick, and thank you for such a wonderful question. So Congo Square is a location where during the height of slavery, that the slave masters that were faith-based would allow the slaves to congregate together. It was on a Sunday, the Sabbath afternoon, after they'd done all the work that they were charged to do in the morning. They would get a half day free to go to this location that came to be known as Congo Square. And while the slaves were from different tribes, different languages, different geographical areas of Africa, and they couldn't communicate through language, they could communicate through music and song and dance, and they could be African for a half day. The slave owners actually found that the slaves were more productive when they were given this opportunity to be themselves, even for a moment.
Right.
And so this is believed to be where jazz was created. And you can kind of see how that might happen, where you just come together and you just share what you have, which is music, dance, and you communicate with each other to be African. So it was very symbolic for us to go back to Congo Square.
I bet. Well, we're coming up on the end of our show. We have just a couple minutes left. I know you've actually moved over to Tanzania. It's this gorgeous country with the Serengeti and Kilimanjaro and everything. I know you're back and forth a lot, but you have a home over there now because you're spending so much time there. You are fully committed to this project, and it's about more than just the income. I mean, obviously, the return that you expect for your investors is extraordinary. But I mean, I've heard references to it coming out in IPO and being comparable to Apple and other types of projects. There's no guarantee, of course, but all the elements are lining up for an IPO that could be life-changing for your investors now. But you're also creating. I've heard talk about 40 million new jobs. You talk about the farmers actually being compensated at a scale that will change their lives generationally. The list goes on, right? We're out of time, but I'm so inspired by the story. Lloyd, is there one last thought you'd want to share with the listeners, and then we are up against the clock?
Yeah, we ask everyone to pray for us and follow us. Please go to tanzanuts.com, TANZNUTZ. So it's nuts with a Z, a zeta, not an S. Nuts, tanzanuts.com. and you can follow our story. You'll be able to engage and potentially buy product from us. We have all kinds of things we're going to be bringing to the market. We are in the market now. We have a wonderful product offering that you can, if you want to know what it's about and what are these cashew nuts and how we're packaging them and how we're bringing them to the U.S., go to our website and you'll start to engage with us. And for those of you that want to watch this and see how it might unfold, you'll have an opportunity to become an investor in our IPO. And we do have pre-IPO offerings as well. If any of you are interested in just learning more about that, if you wouldn't mind, Patrick, we'd have any of your listeners contact you and you can put them in contact with us. And we'd be happy to let them know more about our story and how they might get involved.
Absolutely. There's a pre-IPO meeting a couple of nights a week. So anyone who's interested in learning more about that can be a fantastic opportunity and really a chance to be a part of something that's not just economically phenomenal, but has heart. And we're honored to be a part of it. Frank Hellring and I, my partner, we're very honored to be a part of it, to be supporting you. We're looking at helping with financing and some other things, and just honored to be friends. As they say in Swahili, asante sana for being on my show.
And it's mutual, and we say karibu sana. You're much welcome.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Lloyd, thanks for being here. We'll continue the conversation. Again, we should have you on another time, and we'll update everyone on the progress because there's a lot of things happening, and we just scratched the surface today. But thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.